For years, the whole idea of putting gold into your retirement account meant wrestling with stacks of paper, a whole lot of promises, and some pretty well-hidden risks. You thought you owned the gold, right? But did you really? Well, today we're going to dive into a massive shift, away from those sketchy paper traps and towards something new, real, verifiable digital proof that the gold is yours and yours alone.
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? You buy gold for security, for peace of mind. But what if the very way you're holding that gold is actually your biggest risk? For most people out there with traditional gold IRAs, the answer is, well, it's a little unsettling. So let's find out why.
All right, first things first, let's really break down the problem. I'm talking about the paper trap. This is the old school, traditional way of holding gold in an IRA. Now, on the surface, it looks solid, but believe me, it is just riddled with these hidden landmines that can totally undermine your entire investment.
This right here gets to the absolute heart of the problem. On the left, you see the old way. You think you're buying gold. But with things like ETFs, what you actually own is something called a promissory instrument. It's basically a fancy IOU, and that is a universal way from the real gold on the right having direct legal ownership of a specific physical bar of gold sitting safely in a vault.
So what does this trap actually feel like? Well, you're dealing with painfully slow, manual paperwork. There are huge risks if you ever actually try to get your hands on the physical metal. And you're relying on this long chain of middlemen, these intermediaries, who all get their cut. And the real kicker? The irony of it all is that you're operating inside the very inflationary system that gold is supposed to be protecting you from in the first place.
So, how do we get out of this trap? Well, the solution is a totally new kind of digital plumbing, what you might call a private sovereign treasury operating system. We're going to look at a platform called @ProPro, which acts like a digital conveyor belt, taking that messy, confusing paper trail and transforming it into a perfect, provable chain of ownership.
And this image, it just lays it out perfectly. Look, on the left, you start with your physical asset, the gold, and all the traditional paper filings. In the middle, the system takes all that messy data and translates it into a clean, standardized digital format. And then, on the right, it executes that data into an unchangeable, legally binding smart contract. It's a pipeline that just removes human error and creates a flawless digital chain of title.
And the results? I mean, they're not just better, they are staggering. Just look at these numbers. We're not talking about small tweaks here. This system reduces the time it takes to process everything by up to 73%, and it cuts the time for compliance reporting, which is a massive headache in finance, by up to 85%. That is a fundamental, ground-up reinvention of how this is all done.
Now here is where it gets really, really clever. Think of it like a spell checker for the world of finance. You type a word wrong in a document, and that little red line pops up instantly. This system does the exact same thing for regulations. If a transaction tries to break a rule, the system just sees it as a typo, a syntax error in the code, and it simply will not execute. It stops problems before they can even happen. No more need for those slow, expensive audits after the fact.
Okay, but a technology this powerful can't just float around in the digital either. For it to be truly trustworthy, it needs a rock-solid legal foundation. And this is where we see the huge Texas advantage, and why its specific laws provide this incredibly stable base for the entire system to operate on.
So, why Texas? What's the big deal? Well, it's because this entire system was built from the ground up to snap perfectly into Texas law. We're talking about the Texas Trust Code, its common law, and even recent sound money legislation like HB 999. See, this isn't some vague, one-size-fits-all global platform. It's firmly anchored in a legal framework that is both supportive and predictable.
The system makes sure everything is trustworthy through something it calls a tripartite architectural synergy. Now, that sounds super complex, I know, but it's actually pretty simple. Just think of it as 3 independent specialists on a team. Each one has a very specific, very crucial job to do, and they all have to agree. They all have to give the thumbs up before any transaction can be finalized. Let's break down who these 3 specialists are.
So here's our 3 specialist team. First up, you have RSI. Think of RSI as the digital notary. Its job is to create the final, unchangeable, permanent record of the transaction. Then you have CCG, the compliance officer. This one's the rule keeper, making sure everything follows the law, like know your customer and anti-money laundering rules. And finally, you have AFANET. AFANET is the custodian, the one who actually holds and manages the physical gold. Each one provides its own layer of security and verification. It's airtight.
Okay, so that's all the powerful tech humming away behind the scenes. It's fascinating, right? But what does all of this actually mean for you?
the person who owns the gold. Let's check out the really cool features this system unlocks.
$2,500. What's so special about that number? It's not a fee, it's not a minimum you need to get started, it's actually a key.
It's called the fiduciary trigger. As soon as your account balance with a group like the United Precious Metals Association, or UPMA, crosses that $2,500 line, boom, the full power of the system automatically kicks in. Your assets get tokenized, automated compliance starts running, and, this is huge, your holdings are now covered under a massive $100 million master insurance policy.
And this is where it all gets really practical for your daily life. This sound money hierarchy is designed to make your gold actually useful. So at the very bottom, you have your big chunk of vaulted physical gold. But the system also integrates goldbacks, which are literally a form of physical gold you can hold and spend. And then the True Link card acts like a bridge, letting you buy things in dollars while your real wealth, your gold, stays safe and sound in the vault.
And this might be the biggest game changer of the whole thing, the Gold ALOC, which stands for Gold Equity Line of Credit. It solves the oldest problem for anyone who owns gold. How do you use its value without actually selling it? Well, this feature lets you take out a loan in dollars using your gold as collateral. So you get the cash you need for whatever, but you still own 100% of your gold. And you don't trigger a taxable event. You get liquidity while preserving your core asset. It's incredible.
So when you put all of this together, the legal foundation, the automated trust, these new ways to get liquidity, it's more than just a better financial product. It really represents a fundamental shift in mindset, a totally new way to think about value and wealth itself.
This slide just nails the two mindsets. The old system, it makes you price sensitive. You're stuck in that profit trap, constantly glued to your screen, watching the dollar price go up and down. This new model, though, it lets you become value-centric. Your focus isn't on chasing those wild dollar swings anymore. Instead, you're focused on accumulating physical weight, real ounces of gold, and having the absolute cryptographic proof that you own it.
And that really brings us to the most important takeaway of all. The old system, it was built on institutional promises. You had to trust that they held your gold. You had to trust that your piece of paper was fully backed. This new system, it replaces all that trust with something so much more powerful: cryptographic, legally anchored, and notarized proof.
And that just leaves us with one final question to think about. When you really look at your own retirement, your own savings, ask yourself, is it built on a foundation of shaky institutional promises, or is it built on a rock-solid foundation of verifiable, unchangeable proof?